Okay, Shred Nation, today I am really excited because all of you are going to see an episode of Shred Talks that we had all thought had disappeared. This was filmed at Shaper Studios in San Diego, the world's first do-it-yourself surfboard workshop, and they just opened up a new location in Orange County that I will link down below, so check that out. This episode features Ryan Lovelace, who has a very dedicated following on Instagram and is widely known for designing the Rabbit's Foot surfboard, an uncommon shape that has inspired a lot of exciting surfing. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Without further ado, here it is.
All right, here we go. Ryan Lovelace, take one.
Give a round of applause for Ryan Lovelace. So let's start talking about boards. Like, you have this thing called the Shape-tastic Voyage, and it's basically you traveling all over the world and shaping boards everywhere that you go.
Yeah, it's super cool, and it's also like a super hard job. It's both, you know, so it's really fulfilling in that way. I'll shape like 5 to 8 boards a day for like 7 days, and then go straight to an airport, fly for like 15 hours, go do it for the next 8 days, and do it again and again for like a month and a half. And I'm just like, so it's like super draining, but by the end of it, you've done something pretty fucking cool, and like gotten to travel like directly into like communities of board builders, and I don't know, I think I've gotten a really interesting way to like see a lot of the world. The boards are all custom ordered before I get there, which is really nice. So like, I just have to make sure there's enough orders to cover my plane ticket, pretty much. And the guys will put me up, I'll sleep on a couch or wherever, but as long as I have enough orders to pay for the ticket, then you know, I'm good to go. But I mean, usually by the time I get somewhere, I have like X number of orders, and then by the 7 or 8 or 9 days that I'm there and like people find out and start talking, then people want boards like the last day, and then it doesn't happen, and then we do them the next year.
Do you find like time to surf on these trips? Because it sounds like shape. Like,
if the waves come up, yeah, we go surf. But like I've had days like in New Jersey at my buddy Phil's shop, Glide, like we'll go in at 7:30 in the morning and shape a board, and then go surf for an hour and a half, and go shape 2 more boards, and go surf and like almost eat lunch, and then shape like another 2 more boards and go surf again, and then go home at like 11:30 or 12 and just crash.
so it's like this
And then wake up and do
rotation.
5 boards the next day. So like, so you just kind of find them, you know, if it was also really good when
So-
that was going on.
Like, what does that do for your ability to shape boards? Like, you're surfing all these different waves in different parts of the world. Like, does that make you a better shaper? Do you think, like, having experience on all these different waves?
I mean, I think if someone was traveling all year round, you wouldn't be able to focus so much. But like when I'm home, all I want to do is make boards for my waves. Like, but when I travel, I shape a bunch of different boards, and it's cool. So it kind of does both.
So you mentioned home. Home right now is Santa Barbara,
Yes.
California. Before that, as I understand it, it was Seattle. So what kind of role did surfing have in your life pre-Santa Barbara?
Surfing was like something I really wanted to do, like more than anything. Like I skied full time with my family, and that was our thing. But for some reason, my entire room was covered in surf posters, and like I had a board that sat on my chair and like on my floor, and I would never move it. Like that was my thing. I saved up for like 2 years to get that thing, and like surfing was always like dangled right in front of my reach, you know. And so I knew that when it was college time and when it was time to go somewhere, it was 100% going to be for surf. And I mean, to go to school, but I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to go to school where there wasn't waves. So like, I really didn't. I was pretty, you know, like innocent at that point. I didn't really care where I ended up as long as there was waves. Like,
You're widely known as a guy who really cares intensely about the quality of his work. You'll do everything from hand shape the board all the way through glassing by yourself. Like, how has your definition of success changed as a surfboard builder, given the success you've had as a surfboard builder?
I don't really know. Like, I've never really had a definition of success or like a goal in mind per se. I've just done it, and it's all just snowballed. I never really thought that I'd be making this many boards. It wasn't really, you know. When I decided to make boards full time, I was like, well, if I sell, you know, like 4 or 5 a month, and I glass them all, I can pay my rent, and I can put gas in my car, and do, you know, that was my goal.
What did it feel like the first time you ever had a finished board glassed and like you could surf something you made?
It was pretty transformational in terms of just, I don't know, all of a sudden doors were opened into being able to make and surf stuff that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to afford. Like, I was in City College, you know, like once my buddy Dave said, oh yeah, I'd made my own board. I was like, well, how long did it take you? He was like, 6 months. I was like, oh, totally. Like 6 months is fine. And then I realized he was just like, barely did anything every day on it. And I
Yeah,
did
how'd
it
it
in,
take
like,
him 6 months?
Yeah, I did it in
Did you
like
ever get a follow-up on
2
that?
days. Yeah.
I really want to talk about one of your boards, specifically the Rabbit's Foot. I think that for anyone who's seen footage of that board being surfed, it looks so fun and so unique and so different. Like, do you recommend that to everyone, or is there only like a certain subset of surfers that you advise to order that from you?
I do a fair bit of like asking questions if someone wants one. I want to know that like they're invested and they don't just think they saw something cool and they're like, oh yeah, I want to try that. Like, I'd really rather people try and make their own. Like, for me, like, that's the value in the project is like, it's weird. It's like, go make one, I don't know. Like, there's no rules to it. No one's gonna tell you like, no, that's not gonna work. Like, you don't know, I don't know. It's more gratifying for me than selling one to somebody.
Do you view what you're doing as like trying to change anything or starting any type of a movement or change how boards are made everywhere? Or are you just like on your own trip and you're not even involved in that kind of a thing?
I mean, I'm interested in it, but I'm most interested in just like the development of people's quivers into something more applicable. Like, that's my interest. I'd rather see people get a board from this kind, a board from that kind, a board from me, and a board from those 7 guys. Cool. So like you talked about like glassing my own stuff, and I started phasing that out probably 6 or 8 months ago, and I'd rather not, but my options are like, I can raise my prices through the roof and, you know, make it all myself and make it a super boutique thing and aim that way business-wise. Or I can start having other guys glass my boards, one that, you know, puts money back into the surf community, and that's cool, and hires guys to do what they want to do, and that's awesome. And then high school kids can still save up and buy a board.
Yeah,
like,
it's still accessible.
That's unreal. Like,
Yeah.
so that's the way I'd like to go.
What makes a board fun to shape, and are there some of your board models that you don't like shaping?
No. Sometimes I'm not as motivated if something like doesn't seem as like cool or weird or something, like to do a pretty plain board. You always get excited shaping. Like, I don't think there's been a time where I was just like grumpy when I started shaping and like grumpier when I stopped. Like, I can be in a pretty bad mood and start shaping, by the end I'm fired up. Like,
Sounds kind of like your own surfing experience. Like,
Yeah.
you're in a bad mood, you surf,
Yeah,
you come
go
out, you're
surf.
happy. You're in a bad
Yeah.
mood, you make a board, you come out
Yeah.
of the bay, you're happy. What's your advice to someone who's shaping their first board? What are the 1 or 2 things that you have to get right?
the thing you got to get right is to have fun. Like, the better your energy is when you're making a board and the happier you are doing it, the better the board's going to work. The better your relationship to that board is going to be. I don't know, it's a nice close thing if you hand shape the thing and you made it and you know everything there is to know about that board. Like, I mean, if you've ever made a board, you know every square inch of every board that you touched. Like, you can't make a surfboard without touching the entire surface of it 1,000,000 times. So like, you just kind of get to know it really well.
Coincidentally, we have a Veebles right here.
Okay.
So can you walk us through this? Like,
The biggest thing that makes them like actually work and be like I guess the fine tuning of it is this is a rule for displacement hulls is you take the wide point and you line it up with the apex of the rocker and the thickest part of the board. So if you're looking at a cross section, if everything's in that same like couple square inch range, then that's the highest mass of the board and the volume is right there. So that's that kind of magical feeling where it's all like kind of ball bearing-y, and you know, so like if you line everything up and then foil everything out from that direction, then you have something that kind of does that, and that's like kind of the biggest thing, that you ride them from the wide point. So like you just stand right on that spot and you can kind of wobble around, or you can lay it down, or you can do, you know, it's kind of what makes it work. I was shaping a lot of wide point forward boards, like just full hulls, before I did these, and I really just kind of needed a refresh. I rode a friend of mine's board, Jordan Noble, who's a shaper in Australia, and I was recovering from a broken ankle, and I was like, holy shit, this thing is fun. And it just like kind of lit me up again about surfing, and his was like an Evolution inspired board, and so I just kind of molded his board over in my head for a couple months and decided what I wanted to do, and I wanted it to be more extreme than his was. And actually the first time I drew that nose template, I thought it was horrendous. Like, I'd put it away and I stopped myself. I was like, I'm not shaping that. And I just kind of stopped. I was like, you know what? Like, that was why I'm shaping this board, is like refresh and like challenge myself and get outside my comfort zone. And so then I just shaped that round. It's changed like slightly, like in its fine details, and depending on if it's a bigger one or smaller one or whose it is, I'll play with that nose width a lot. This one's pretty much what I'd see as like standard.
For someone who usually surfs like normal thrusters, how do you describe a displacement hole like this is feeling?
I don't know, man. it's kind of one of those things, like, if you hear what they do or you see someone doing it, you're like, wow, that looks smooth, or that looks fast, or that looks like connected, or that's, you know, kind of what you should probably try is some kind of hull. Now, this I wouldn't classify as a displacement hull. That's kind of one of my like big things. It's displacement hull, like one of the key things that the wide point is forward.
Okay.
Like first thing about this board, the wide point's back. So like that to me disqualifies it. Whereas like everything about like the bones and the skeleton of it and how I put it together, it came from my shaping those boards. The first board I shaped was a huge twin fish. I used to weigh quite a bit more, and I made like a 6'4" by like 24 by like 3 1/4 twin fish. It was a beast, but I loved it. Like, I thought it was great. So like that was my first board. And then the second one was like a winged round pin, like wide point forward, kind of like single finny thing. I ended up converting it to a bonzer. And then like the third board, I think, was another one of those. And then just kind of, you know, things got weird. I was just like, I'd see a picture of something, because there wasn't a lot of information out like in 2005-ish. And like, it was out there and like it was starting to trickle out, and I just see these things and I'm like, I gotta try that.
So fabric inlays, what type of textiles do you use, and how does that change the glassing process?
Ideally, like the thinnest fabric you can find is the best, but I've definitely like done stuff thicker than like these pants. It's like, it just depends on how much like weight you'd want to add to it, or how much sanding you want to do, or like blending of all the different layers, you know, like. I always do my fabrics on top of the lamination so that there's nothing between the foam and the glass, and a lot of guys will do them under, and I just don't really like that. It seems like then if you screw it up too, you could take it off if you wanted without ruining the whole board. Just kind of a nice buffer if you do it that way. But generally you just kind of prep more after it for the sanding. You baste the difference in height like 2 or 3 times and like lay it on there, and then just be really mindful when you're sanding it. And like in terms of weight, it depends on the fabric, it depends on the board. Not a lot, you know, because I don't do like whole board inlays or something like that. I'll do like a piece maybe like this big and maybe that wide or something like that. It doesn't add that much more weight. I also sand pretty aggressively. And I'll lay into a board pretty good. So I don't think my boards are heavy anyways. They usually tend to be lighter than I thought they would be. But I like it that way, so it's cool. It really depends on the board. They all kind of have their own stories. Like, a lot of them are like ideas that buddies of mine had and they wanted me to try out. And I'd be like, okay, kind of like this. And then I draw it and I'd be like, I think so. And then we just try and do it. Like, you just give it a shot, you know? And so like, I mean, a lot of it, you know, when you see a good surfer ride a board and surf it well, you're like, well, that's worth following. Like, even if it is quirky or a little weird, like there's something to refine in there and make it better, like you just kind of keep going and try this one and try that one, and hey, that guy surfs really cool, what's he on? It's like, I'm gonna try and make one of those. I really was very naive in my approach. I didn't know anything about anything. I just would go buy a blank and go make it into something and like hope it was fun to surf.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking very much Ryan Lovelace for joining us.